Well, thanks everybody. As Kevin said, as things are picking up and we're getting busier, uh, to have you guys carve out this time, it's noticed and appreciated, and it's helpful to everybody on the call. Actually, it's helpful to everybody who'll watch this recording afterwards if they didn't make it. So thanks. Today, we're fortunate to have Amanda Helgemoe with us. Uh, Amanda is president and CEO of New Vista, which I think she's been there over 20 years. So she gets big snaps for that. She's also EDPA's VP for Exhibitor Advocacy, which means she can be the voice on sharing the exhibitor's perspective to EDPA and as a direct channel, so we can hear their thoughts, their thinking, how they like things, how they dislike things. Amanda, I'm going to allow you to kind of reintroduce yourself better than I just did and share your perspective on exhibitor advocacy and where we are now as we're all starting to regenerate our businesses. Amanda?
Sure. I'll just tell you briefly. I know most of you on the call, so I think you know my background. But as it relates to exhibitor advocacy, it's definitely something I've been passionate about. When I started in this industry over 25 years ago, I was on the corporate side in a sales position for a Fortune 100 company. And at that company, we really, couldn't do anything unless our customers, approved of it. So when I came into this industry, the first thing I noticed was, well, why aren't we listening to the people who are paying the bills? It literally to this day is kind of a mind-boggling thing. And so what I realized over the years is that, the show organizers and associations really don't look at the people paying the bills as their customer. They look at the attendees as the customer. So once I realized that and started talking to more exhibitors, it became evident that somebody really needed to advocate for them, and really the only place they had to talk and try to get their voices heard was TSA, TFEA, TS2 was a show. I think we all are aware of that. So once that went away, there was a pretty big problem in our industry. We realized that there just wasn't a place or a forum for them to really talk and get some of their pain points out to the marketplace. So that's how the exhibitor advocacy group started, and that was probably about 17, 18 years ago. And then I was asked to join from the exhibitors. Most of the group is made up of exhibitors. I'm one of 3 suppliers in the group, and I was asked to join about, I think 12, 13 years ago. So once I got on the executive committee with EDPA and we started talking about advocacy, and I explained to them what had happened, what I was involved with, just it was a natural thing for the EDPA to approve and say, look, we need to bring this under our wing. We need to endorse this. We need to support it. Obviously, all of our members, customers are exhibitors, so it just made sense. So here we are today. Advocacy became one of our big pillars about 2 years ago, and then COVID hit. And so now you're all very well aware of the industry advocacy that EDPA has been doing, and Chris Griffin on the EC is heading that up, and a lot of you on the phone, and Rob Cohen and Kevin and others are involved with that. So that's kind of just a little bit more background, if that helps. I'll start there.
Yeah, I'm going to jump right in, Amanda, and ask you a question because I don't want to get too far past your introduction because it relates to that.
Sure.
Before you came on, I was briefly chatting with Tom Beard here, and I find it extremely interesting that you, as top of the food chain at New Vista, a labor company, is the head advocate for exhibitors. It's an interesting, not dichotomy, but taken outside of this conversation, when you talk to an exhibitor and you say, where are your pain points? It's not unusual for them to say something about labor, whether it's the cost or something. How the heck did you, and in your role, get tagged for this responsibility? Because it's perfect, it fits perfectly, but it's kind of odd.
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I have a very straightforward, good answer to that. Labor, as you're aware, in most cities, we have to sign a contract and we have to deal with the unions, right? So historically, the unions have been blamed for all the issues in our industry. And once you dig into that and you really understand what's going on, you realize that perhaps labor really isn't the only problem. So a lot of it comes down to the negotiation between the show organizers, associations, and the general contractors, which is really outside of labor, but historically they've put the unions in that bucket and have said, well, it's the union's fault, which i.e. then translates to labor. So it's very confusing. But once you understand what's really going on, you're like, aha, you have an aha moment. And when the National Association of Broadcasters dug into this, there was a first time meeting that's never happened in our industry where the association actually met with the head of the unions in Las Vegas. That never happened. It can happen. There's no reason why it shouldn't happen. And they, let's just say they learned a lot and they realized what was really going on, and therefore they were able to make significant changes to their pricing model once they really understood the flow of the dollars and realized that the unions were really not the problem. So
Gotcha.
it's true. It's hard to swallow and it's hard to understand. But I think if we got into that today, I'd probably have to teach about a 4-hour course, and I don't think that's anything anybody on this phone probably wants to do today. But the reality is the general contractors and the associations, they make a deal, and that's where it starts. And it's really outside of what the unions charge. It has nothing to do with it. So when you understand that, then you need, as an exhibitor, and what we try to explain to our exhibitors is you guys need to get together. You need to call the meeting with your association organizer, and then you call in the head of the union, and it will all be, that's where you can everything will be disclosed and understood at that point, and then you can start moving forward. So hopefully we're hoping that starts to become the norm, where they all of these organizations, associations start calling the unions in to have those discussions and meetings.
Thanks for tackling a potentially hazardous question right at the top. Kevin, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, first question for you, Amanda, is as just from an outlook standpoint, are you hopeful for? I mean, we are all faced with a mass of shows this fall.
Sure.
Are you hopeful that NAB model is post-COVID is going to receive maybe some more adoption because of we're all trying to get people to come back?
Yeah, I am very hopeful for the first time, and I'll tell you why. I've also been invited into other ad hoc big industry meetings where a lot of organizers and associations sit, and they are open for the first time because they're all scrambling. That they are trying to figure out how they're going to make money but they realize that there's a problem. And so now for the first time, they're actually listening to the exhibitors. And they're not just looking at their attendees and just talking to their attendees. They're inviting the exhibitors into the conversation. So I am definitely very hopeful that you're going to see some significant changes. I think short term, though, Kevin, and everyone's talking about this right now, and they're saying, oh, look, like take a show, pick a show, take RSNA. If you talk to that organizer right now, they're like, great, everyone's signing on, they're coming back, they're taking their big footprint. I think because what we're hearing and seeing, because everyone's in scramble mode and they still have this money in their budget, they're going to be able to do whatever they need to do to get through the year. I think once we hit 2022 and beyond, that's where you're going to start seeing a lot of these changes.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah, I hope so.
Mr. Beard, jump right in.
Kevin Carty and I were reminiscing a month ago about our roles on the Exhibitor Advisory Committee for TS2, way back when, way back when, and kind of laughing about the fact that we were completely neutered and had no power at all. We were just kind of an afterthought. But have exhibitor advisory committees evolved at all to have a stronger voice?
Yeah, I mean, we started seeing them pop up, and I hate to constantly refer to NAB because there are other shows that are doing this, and there have been some announcements with like ConAgra, the group that runs ConAgra, and all their shows. They just transition to this new model. So we're gonna start being able to reference other shows, and I think, you know, that will help. But that's where it starts. You know, they realize they have to draw in a good mix of the exhibitors, not just the exhibitors with the big footprints, but everything from 10 by 10, you know, up to the smaller islands, up to the larger footprints. They need to have all of them in the room for these discussions. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing it on a lot of other shows. NADA, we were, you know, working with them. I was personally involved because we had a client. I had two very large clients who were very vocal. You're going to see some significant changes with that show. They made some initial announcements that we were not happy with, and they've now made some significant adjustments. So yeah, I think you're going to start seeing it across the board. And, you know, we just, you know, once you get beyond 1 or 2 and you get up to 20, 30, you know, top 200 shows, I think that's when it's going to start to really take hold.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Mintz. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
So I remember, we'll show our age here a little, back when there was something called the All Industry Summit that we attended a bunch of meetings for. And I remember sitting with some show owners at a table, and I asked them the question that you spoke of in your preamble, namely that who is their customer, and that they clearly viewed their customer as the attendee and not the exhibitor. They also made the comment that as the exhibitor will come and pay whatever they're told to pay, as long as they deliver the attendees.
Right.
So as Kevin pointed out earlier, this is a critical time right now where attendance may be down, and then their argument will be, well, we're still delivering the quality attendee.
Right.
So it will be interesting to see if truly, as you said, if some of these top 50 or 100 shows convert over, will there be a following there? In your conversations with our own industry show, because I'm sure you've had some with the folks at Exhibitor Live, and I'm not picking on them, but why wouldn't our industry have a show that leads the way?
So I would love for everybody on this phone to ask Randy that question, because I have asked him that question exactly the way you just asked it. The response I got was something along the lines of, Amanda, be patient, I'm working on it. So he is well aware. You know, Randy has been on many of these calls with me and these other ad hoc groups with show organizers. He's very well educated. He is definitely aware of the rubs. So I think he might perhaps be battling a little bit with the person who owns that show. But I don't think he should, you know, I told him straight up, I said, you need to do this for us. We need to set the example. We need to see it. So I would encourage everybody to have that conversation with them that exhibits at that show. I actually pulled out of the show this year. And I'm going to be there, but I told him that my expectation was that I wanted to see this at the forefront, and that I fully anticipate if he changes to that model in 2022, that I would definitely be back on the floor. So yeah, it's definitely something that I think we all need to pressure him.
And I'm not picking on Randy. I want to be clear about
love
that.
Randy. He's one of my buds. I love him. I was just with him in Atlanta. So, you know, I try not to beat him up too much every time I see him, but I said, this is really, really important, Randy. And, you know, for the first time, he got approval to let our group, so the Exhibitor Advocacy group, he was going to give us, he gave us free space in I don't know what they call it, the town hall area, or, you know, whichever area that was. We were prepared with a presentation, is going to be free to anyone and everyone, both on the exhibitor side and the attendee side, to come and listen in. And so we were not able to talk about this, but he gave us that space to talk about it at his show, and then it got canceled. So he's on board. I think he's still fighting a little bit of an upstream battle, but you know, I agree. I think he needs to make significant changes to his pricing model.
Guys, I can only see a portion of our attendees, so if you see raised hands, help me identify them. Any questions out there so far from what you've heard? Then let me throw out a generic one at you, Amanda.
Sure.
You have a front row seat to a lot of what's going on right now with shows and attendance. Do you see certain industries that are way ahead of others or way behind and lagging as far as getting traction with attendees?
Yeah, I think that the pharmaceutical industry is kind of last to the table, but they seem to be coming in full force now starting October 1st. I think because of their industry, it kind of made sense for the doctors and, that's the attendee and not being willing to get out there until they were comfortable. They're coming back. Just a few shows I've been to in the last couple months, attendance was definitely light. But they had buyers there, I will say. And what shocked me was, there were no masks, there's no social distancing, there was no anything. That was quite interesting to me. As far as if I had to say, I don't think it's industry necessarily specific, although I will say for obvious reasons, the shows that had heavy international attendance, those also were, suffering or shut down. But beyond that, I think it's more from just a show by show basis and the comfort level and the expectation that organizer has as far as how many exhibitors are going to get and how many attendees they're going to get. I don't really see a trend there right now, and I don't know if anybody else on the phone does, but I really don't see that. In talking with CISO and IAEE, I think it's kind of all over the place.
Thanks. Mr. White.
Hey, Amanda. I'm a little bit curious, as everyone's excited about coming back to trade shows, if there is if the industry is being given a little bit of a pass at this point, as far as rules and regulations of what's happened in the past. And my fear is kind of a question. It's kind of a statement. My fear is that that free pass will settle into same old, but that the problems won't ever be resolved. And our excitement right now of people coming back, and then people experience the side of trade shows that they don't like, that they won't come back the second or the third time. I mean, is that a fear that you're seeing?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about that a lot. And like I said, I'm personally shocked. And I actually had a meeting with my team yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing. And everyone said, well, why didn't the GBAC, they did all the work. It's all laid out as far as what we need to do, how we need to make sure we keep attendees safe. Why hasn't that become the norm? And I personally do not have an answer for it. I haven't found an answer for it. And we're wondering if maybe it's just because this went on for so long and so many people have been bleeding for so long that maybe we're just putting a Band-Aid on things. And will it become the norm in 2022 and beyond? I don't have an answer for. It just seems like common sense to me that we would use that, because like I said, it's an association. The work has been done. They put a ton of money and time and research into it. And I personally have a lot of my, teammate, my city managers and supervisors and lead guys, we told them all, it was $150 to go get a individual certification. So they all went and got their certifications. And now they're sitting there going, well, do I need it? It's a great question. I don't know. It's very bizarre. Rob has a question.
I think it goes back to something else. One, we don't like regulation as human beings.
Sure.
And our industry turned its back on a UL certification process that the EDPA worked hard to get under Larry Kulchwick, UL 2305, still stick in my mind, and I can't get it out. But
sitting on my desk from Larry.
That there should have been a standard for the trade show industry as to how to handle things from an electrical standpoint, and nobody wanted to have anything to do with it.
Yep.
So
I'm just amazed And like Rob said, I can't answer that question. So I don't know. Again, I came from the corporate side, so this industry, it took me a while to really understand it. But I think he's right. I think we shy away from it. We do everything we can to keep it away, keep it out.
I don't mean this to sound negative, but there's definitely a following mentality in general with people. And part of my fear with an unfortunate, like you said, so many people put so much time, effort, and energy into GBAC, for example. And you could almost equate, compare it even to the talks of having, something in your Apple wallet that showed you were vaccinated. There was talk about that to get on a show floor and whatnot. But once the shows hit and they weren't having that, I feel like it was sort of out of sight, out of mind, because it's like, well, this has happened now and people are waiting to see, and you're not hearing conversations really anymore about shows that are coming up in September and October that the organizers were talking about maybe having to have, some sort of an identification for a vaccine, or that they were hyping that their facility was going to be GVAC. And it is based on all the efforts that we all know on this call that went into a lot of that. It is a little sad to see that it's probably, I think realistically, guys, it's just not going to be a thing.
You could be right, Kevin.
I mean, we have to remember that human behavior, human beings have very short memories, and they want to get not me trying to be insulting to anyone on this call. If I was, I'd be more direct. But, we want to forget, and we want to get back to doing what we're doing, and which is a lot of having to do with the folks that choose not to get vaccinated, right? And that they'll get through it and do it their way. But, folks just want to put it aside and move forward. They couldn't jump on airplanes fast enough. And what are we all waiting for? We're waiting for corporations to stop being scared, okay, of letting their employees travel because of potential liability. And Congress didn't protect them on that. And at some point, they're going to have to let go and just let people start traveling and realize this could really be nothing worse than a workers' comp claim.
Right. Yep. So we'll see. We're all gonna learn together. I can't, like I said, in all the calls I have with the facilities, the head of IAVM, IAE, CISO, I don't see anywhere anything that says we're gonna see any sort of standard as it relates to safety and health. But I will tell you the significant change, if you all had a chance to read the white paper that the group spent a lot of time writing in April, I think it was, we published, the significant difference on the exhibitor side that the organizers and associations cannot ignore and realize is going to hit them hard in 2022 is that their budgets are not going up. If anything, they've gone down. But at the same time, they've had to allocate money to digital and virtual, whatever. I know we are all confused virtual with digital, but the reality is there is money there and it has been allocated. Some things have worked, some things haven't. They've all had to, because they were forced to experiment. So they're already seeing, when they're signing space contracts in 2022, people are already taking smaller space because they're like, we know we're going to have a problem. So that is really the biggest difference. And I think the reason why, back to the original question, our group is hopeful that they're now going to view the exhibitor as much, as the attendee as the customer. And they know they need their help to get through this.
Mr. Bendix. Can't hear you, Mark.
Yeah, Amanda, along that note, after 9/11, suddenly DISA really became a thing, and everybody was wrapping cloth around some bent pipe. And the trucking companies and the drayage companies really got punched in the mouth. And then after the real estate crash in the late aughts, suddenly rental wasn't, crappy gem system with duct tape adhesive on it, and the third time you'd use a piece of white sinter that was all scuffed up, and rental wasn't for poor people. It was upscale and it was a strategic business decision.
Right.
Do you think that the one thing that's going to come out of the COVID deal is the fact that the downsizing of the booth and the simplifying of the booth to give it more negative space for whether it's social distancing, or social distancing is a nice excuse to downsize the booth and have more digital content because you can repurpose it after the show or put it online for non-attendees, is one of the trends that's going to come out of this, that's going to last. So unless exhibit houses become content developers or partner with them, it's just going to be one more slice of the pie that they're going to lose.
So are you asking, do I think that's,
Do you think that that's going to be a trend that's going to stick around?
so it's interesting. We actually asked that question, I think 2 calls ago of our group. We have about 13 brands represented in our group. Most of them are larger brands. We got a lot of different answers because I'll take Thermo Fisher, okay? They had a extremely successful show with a virtual event. They were one of the few on the phone. And it really just came down to the sales that they were able to make, okay? Which they also understand that probably was just, I don't want to say luck. She didn't say luck, but she said coincidence. She goes, how do I explain to my management that it's just timing, right? And so she's fighting right now to get her budget back because she, as the exhibit manager, doesn't believe that that's really going to be the norm. But because it was successful, right? Management's sitting there saying, well, we're not giving you the budget back. We're going to give you some of it. We're going to go to some shows, but you're going to cut your shows in half, and you're going to focus. Your team is going to focus on this. So, it was Mark. It was like we had 13 different answers. So I don't know. I mean, Rob, what are you seeing?
Well, I saw Exhibit Concepts did a presentation, and I think it was Kellogg's. It was a cereal company, and they were going through one of their digital presentations, and it was incredibly successful. But one of the reasons it was successful for them was they had educational content that they usually did in the booth at the show, and they were able to do it in the booth at the show as well as online for non-attendees, but then leverage that for the rest of the year on their website for people to log in for. And they were like, we got like 8 times the buy-in for this continuing education stuff. And they just thought, this is great.
Yeah. Well, and Rob, I'll let you go, and then I'll tell you what we learned what we were told by the head of HP and Engage. Go ahead, Rob.
So the very interesting point we're talking about here is Thermo Fisher, Kellogg, HP, okay? They can afford to step out of the box and do something. As I speak with large technology companies engaged in this space, if you don't have a 6-figure budget to throw at this, they tell you not to waste your time.
Right.
The vast majority of exhibitors, we have to remember, in this industry are not the large companies. Right. And that is why I keep saying to our customers, the exhibit houses that I'm speaking with, don't get scared away by this. Stay in your lane of who you're representing. And there's a good business to be had here still in physical exhibits.
And I think it's, Rob, it's something like, if not close to 80% or over 80% are 10 by 10s and 10 by 20s. So, you've got to really take that with a grain of salt. And that's why there's a survey out there that I really use more than, just information I get from our group that we're constantly talking about, because it's a better representation of, the smaller exhibits. And it was a survey that, it's on the EDPA website that Trade Show Logic did, and it was 13, they sent it out to 13,000 exhibitors of all sizes. And so I really like, I'm listening to what they're saying. And a lot of it is along the lines of what you just said. They desperately need a trade show. They desperately need to be in that face environment to sell their product, because they don't have that budget. the thing that we're watching and what we've actually, EDPA just sent a letter over to Recon. We're watching these general contractors and these associations and making sure that they understand that they should not, for various reasons. One is it may or may not be legal. Let the general contractors, close the show. And, that's the thing that this group, I think with most of our customers on this phone, we need to be really watching and talking about and making sure that does not become a trend. We'll see what happens with Recon. They've not responded to us yet. The good news is a lot of the exhibitors are not going, good news to make a point, are not going to the show because they don't have the freedom to use one of you on this call. So that's really the thing that we're for the small to medium sized guy that I think we need to be very conscientious of and make sure that we're aware of it and we're talking with our customers and helping them have those conversations with their association and not letting the general contractor do that. And they were, it's so fun to watch these guys. They point the finger. They go, well, he did it. And you're like, he did it. And you're like, no, actually, I'm certain you, Mr. Show Organizer Association, are ultimately responsible for whatever decisions are made. It's your show. You may let the general contractors tell you or make a suggestion that you sign off on, but ultimately, that's where the buck stops, and that's who we need to be talking to.
I don't want to pick a scab, but has anybody at all heard what would even qualify as a rational reason for them doing that? Because I've yet to hear.
Person in charge directly on a Zoom call in front of 20 people. Her response to me was, it's just a one-off thing. We're doing it because our big show is in May. We're still going to have our big show, our regular show in 2022. And we didn't think that the exhibitors could afford to bring their custom booths and their, whatever in. And I said, really? Because I actually pulled the show kit and I did some math. And it, in a lot of ways, is cheaper for them to bring their booth in because they've already paid for it.
Yes.
So she, at which point she did not have a response to me, and I don't think she'll be friending me on LinkedIn anymore. But I just said, look, I said, that's not at all true. And if that's what, you've been told by executive management to say, it's not true. And anyone that has an exhibit, especially if it's sitting in Las Vegas in a warehouse, they're going to want to use that exhibit over whatever offer you're going to give them in the show kit. And she couldn't, it kind of, quickly changed the topic, Kevin.
But that was, Amanda, that was the exact explanation that I was told by the GSC, that it was really, they were doing the exhibitor a favor by saving them money. Exactly. And we're going to go back to the way it used to be. But this show was really helping the exhibitor out this one time, and it would not be recurring. Yeah.
So the last time I checked, this is about 2 weeks ago, they were really struggling to get exhibitors to come. I talked to a couple of people who have multiple exhibits on that floor. I have about 10. We had one customer say they were going. I talked to another exhibit house that has about 30 on the floor. They said they had a handful that said they were going. So we'll see. But we sent the letter. EDPA sent it over on behalf of our customers, asking Recon to reconsider and open it up. So we'll see what happens. I think Mike had a question. He was raising his hand and he was being very patient. Sorry, Mike.
That's okay. Amanda, I have a question only because it pertains to 3 different groups that I sit on, which 2 are business incubators and 1 is a college master's entrepreneurship program. And they have these small startup companies, which are great. And a lot of them have gotten funding, and they'll get anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 in seed funding. They want to do trade shows. Some of them have bought little pop-ups to do. And as I'm mentoring and talking with them, their biggest complaint is, of course, the drayage going, they're going to I'm going to fly in with my little pop-up, and then I got to pay to get it put there, and then I got to pay union to set it up and union to tear it down and drayage, and it doubles the cost, and then I can't afford it. So I guess
Right.
the question is, have you seen any loosening from the convention centers and the people who are running shows and all that stuff, all those other people, to let exhibitors roll something in and set it up themselves?
Yeah, I think I hear that that's a conversation they're absolutely having. And again, I don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be, but I anticipate that it will be much more user friendly. You know, with NAB, for instance, because they were able to weed out all the reality of what the rules were and the rules are not. Las Vegas, you can absolutely set up your own exhibit. But what do most people think? They absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
They absolutely can.
It's true.
So, you know, that just goes back to, you know, unfortunately, the situation with, you know, it's on a show by show basis. These organizers and associations are listening to the wrong person. They're not listening to the unions. You know, as long as you're not getting up on a ladder, you can set up your own exhibit. And I'm pretty sure the last time I set up a 10 by 10, I didn't have to get up on a ladder. So I think that you're going to see a lot of these rules change. There was a potentially damaging article that hit last week. It came out of it was the Contrarian. It was in reference to the Chicago McCormick Center. I don't know if you guys saw that or read that article. It's a very long article, but it's worth a read. They're like, look, Chicago's going to start losing shows. They just are. If they do not really give the exhibitors more rights and loosen up some of these rules. They're like, there are a lot of other cities out there begging for business, and you're going to start seeing these contracts getting signed. And they're like, it doesn't make sense. To your point, they couldn't even possibly think about going to a show right now if the rules stand in Chicago, you know, for that type of budget. I mean, they couldn't even consider going. So that it's, like I said, it's all on the table right now and it's all being discussed.
Amanda, I'm blowing dust off of something I thought I heard years ago, but was there ever a rule, whether it was universal or industry, that said if you can wheel in your own portable exhibit and one person can set it up in 60 minutes or less, you're free to go? Was that something my mind just made up, or did
Yeah,
that ever
it's the rule that if you read the contracts like I do, it has to do with, it's not really the time if you can set it up in an hour. It's more along the lines of, do you have to use power tools? Do you have to get up on a ladder, right? So that's how the union contracts read. But unfortunately, you know, there have been multiple show kits that have been published that don't follow the rules and make up the rules, you know, as they go. And that's something that our group is constantly, and, you know, Recon's a good example where we're, you know, there was a show, American Heart, that I worked on where, and, you know, if you go to the website to the Orange County Convention Center, you can almost do whatever you want to do there. And most kits say you can't. So it's, again, unfortunately, these are our customers and they're confused. Everyone's confused. And, you know, we have to get it. The fight has to be at the top. Thank you, Kevin. That's the article. The fight has to be at the top before the show gets published. Because once that show gets published, right, everyone's going to think, I have to follow these rules or else I'm going to be shut down, or I'm not, you know, they're going to be too scared or afraid to go against what that kit says. So that's where our group is constantly fighting the fight, is trying to make sure that the associations and organizers know what the exhibitors can and can't do in any given venue, not just city, but in any given venue.
Tom, go to you first, then Rob.
Yeah, man, I read that article earlier this week, and I thought it was a bit biased towards Chicago in terms of how they were presenting cost and the expense of exhibiting. And to your point, though, they did relax the work rules in Chicago years ago.
Yep.
After what, Hardware left and one other big show left.
Yeah, it was over.
Where you can set up, as long as you're using your own company employees, you can do the setup if you're on ladders. But to your point, people don't know that. And it's, you know, I read an article this week and I'm like, I just shake my head. The disinformation or misinformation out there, it's horrible.
Yeah, there was a lot of good information, but again, they left out a big chunk of the story, which is what you just said, but again, Tom, these kits are published and they're not saying that, they're not sharing that information with them yet. If you have to dig for it. If you go to McCormick Center, you can find it. It's called the Exhibitor Bill of Rights. It's right there on their website, right? But then you go to the show kit for a show in Chicago and you're like, well, wait a minute. It says I can't do this. What is going on here? And then they've created confusion, and exhibitors throw their hands up and say, well, I'm either going to go or I'm not going to go. And if they do go, they feel like they have to follow, the rules in the kit.
But who writes the show kits?
Well, you know who writes the show kits right
Okay,
now.
that answers that question, right?
That the show kits need to be actually written by the organizer and association. They're written by the general contractor.
Rob, then Mark.
Yeah, so I think we also have to do a better job of educating our customers. I'll tell this as a quick story at Exhibitor Show. There's a rule out there that you can handle your own products. No one can stop you from doing that. We're setting up our booth. We're installing our own lighting. I call it union bullying because they're trying to preserve revenue. Guy for the electrical union comes over and says, you can't do that. So why can't I do that? I said, it's my own product. He goes, I'm going to have to get a supervisor over here. So me and my big mouth says, well, I really don't care if you get the Pope over here. It's go ahead. So the guy comes over.
Go to the top, Rob.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't mess around. You just go right up, right? So it gets his supervisor over and he goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm setting up my own product. Do you have a problem with that? And he looked at me and goes, have a good day, sir. But it's like, if the exhibitor doesn't know the rule, right, they're going to get bullied into paying for the labor.
Correct. We have to do a better job, and that's why we made the decision at EDPA that we first need to reach our members, right, to educate our members that we really have to take more of a stand in helping our customers. They're just too busy, they've got a gazillion thousand different things for them to sit down and for you to sit down and actually educate them on this topic it's difficult. But when it comes to thousands and thousands of dollars and making a decision, whether or not they're going to go to the show, I'm going to spend the time educating them. Obviously for selfish reasons, I don't want them to pull out of the show. So.
Yeah, I've had this conversation, when consulting with clients a million times, and the analogy I've used a lot, and going back to what Amanda said was, I said, because they complain about drayage and they complain about the decorator. And I said, here's the way you got to think about it. You're going to a wedding and it's $65 a plate for the chicken breast. Okay. It's not the caterer's fault. It's the bride that wants the white chocolate fountain and the dark chocolate fountain and the 12 white horses pulling the carriage into the reception and all the other stuff. And it's, please, daddy, I want daddy, and blah, 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 blah. And the bride, the wedding planner just throws all that stuff in a pot, and it's $65 a chicken breast. And it's the same thing at a show. The organizer says, I want an opening night reception. I want 6 private offices on the floor. I want the fancy aisle signs. I want the plush aisle carpet. I want this. 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 I want the really nice bags. I want the really nice lanyards. All that stuff gets thrown in a pot and it goes into the drayage.
Yep.
And they don't understand that stuff. But that being said, I read that article about Chicago too. But where I saw the link was on that, you work in trade shows page on Facebook. And so the spin it got on there was from all the union guys on that page going, can you believe this? These people just don't understand that the brothers and sisters got to eat and they just got to pay what they got to pay. So that page doesn't do anybody any favors either.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. So it's, like I said, it's very confusing, and I don't think we can expect our customers to really understand this. I think we have to prioritize for them. We have to just make sure that, the associations and organizers are representing them the way they should be representing them. And they really do need to understand the rules. I mean, I was straight up told by American Heart, we don't know. we don't care. We're like, well, you should care because all your members are upset.
Now, does the
And they're going to
HCEA,
out of your show. Yeah.
does the HCEA have any impact on that?
As far as,
Well, you know, the Healthcare Exhibitors Association, and you've got all these healthcare shows. As a
Right.
group, do they have any clout when they go to the show management and the associations and go, nice show you got there. Be a shame if nobody showed up.
right. Yeah, they have clout. I mean, it all comes back to, you know, there's another association I've spoken at with Medtronic and others, and we had a room full, I don't know, 5 years ago. I think there were about 60 associations in the room. Their jaws were on the table. They had no idea. They had
The
no
TSCA used to
idea
kind
what
of do
to
that.
their customers. Pardon me?
You know, the TSCA used to kind of be that
Correct.
body until the last 3 or 4 years. About all it accomplished was to remind everybody to go update their living will. But I mean, if you go back 15 years, they actually were a good lobbying force.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's why I think that's why EDPA, you know, we're trying to take this on because there's really nobody out there that's really been helping them. So,
Mr. Beach, I see your hand.
yeah.
If you're, Greg, you're muted.
Always somebody, right? I don't disagree with the difference between, you know, large exhibitors and small to medium sized exhibitors. I think that's an important distinction to be made. I think the frustrating part for me is that the conversations are often not as in the weeds when it comes to budgeting as what we're talking about here. I mean, we're talking about event marketing or that event channel competing with other marketing channels.
Mhm.
And that's, you know, it's the conversations that we're having sometimes on behalf of our customers with these show entities. It's like, you know, it's not a question of, you know, drayage or labor cost or those types of things. It's like, look, we're being pressured to deal with event spend in a budget cycle where we can't use the previous period to benchmark.
Right.
And I mean, these are big macro conversations.
Right.
And to your point, Amanda, I think you referenced it earlier. I mean, some of our customers are attending these events because they couldn't get their money back from the show that happened previously. But let me tell you, they're not re-upping for the same space that they had before. And we're dealing with the predicate of, to Rob's point earlier, are they going to deliver the attendees? So, you know, it just seems counterintuitive to me. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's very frustrating when you're having conversations at that level that, you know, it's almost like we have to get explicit with the threat. And if the threat's not explicit, you know, a la NAB, then it's just, you know, at this point, there's just too many factors that lead to the status quo.
Yeah. I think, Greg, you know, the one thing I was encouraged by with, you know, one of the meetings I was involved with, I think there was like 86 people on the call, and out of the 86, it was over 50 organizers and associations, and they are listening and they hear this. And what was interesting is I think, and I noticed some people I didn't recognize, and I asked the organizer after, I go, hey, who's this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy? Well, they're all new people coming in who think they can do it better, you know, and add a hell of a lot more value. And I think we're going to see that too. You know, I think you're going to see a big cleansing and you're going to see some new players. I personally, that's my personal opinion. But I think you're going to start noticing that. I totally agree with you. You know, we are fighting, and if they don't understand that these budgets, if they don't believe that these budgets really are not going to go up, then I don't know how else we explain to them. They're not going to go up. I mean, look at history. Look at how corporations work. Look at how budgets work. You know, if anything, they're going to go down.
Yeah.
So I don't know how else we can get that message out there. But I think, I can't give you, we're all going to learn together what the percentages are next year of how many new players are entering the field and how many new shows and how many shows are going under or out.
Yeah.
But, a lot of them are in trouble. So I don't know who's going to be able to hang on and think that they can hang on with the same model, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the question.
Before we wrap up here, are there any last questions? Mel, I see your hand.
I just want one question quick for you, Amanda. It sounds like as we've gone through this the last hour, is that in the past we've always advocated for the exhibitor to be a voice to champion their rights, and that's the only way it'll change. But I'm getting a greater sense that what's going to cause the change is just the sheer economics of trade shows, less so probably. I mean, we may be naive to think the exhibitors are going to band together. And I've always said that the show organizer counts on the exhibitors not banding together because they're a collective group of competitors, right? Why would they band together to show when they're competing against one another? But the economics of the model might force the change in itself. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I think so. I think this is a moment in time that's just, it's just so disruptive that I could be completely wrong, but I agree with you. I don't see how it can go back because of that. There's only so much money. You can choose to charge whatever you want with drage, but to Greg's point, okay, but I'm fighting for all of these other channels and I can't, so therefore I'm just not going to go to that show. I can't. So
Mr. Carney.
I really believe from all the conversations I've had, and I think they know it. The associations and organizers know it. So they're asking questions, they're having meetings they've never had before. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic.
Kevin?
I was just going to say the exclamation point I put on something you said earlier, Amanda, is, and I know we're a small microcosm of all of this, of what our customers represent, but our own industry show needs to lead in this, and they need to hear from, because if we do that, we've got a model then that we can push out to all the end clients and say, look at what we're doing and look at how well this works. Or what doesn't work and what does work about it. But unfortunately, my fear is if that doesn't happen, I mean, to me, that would be a big exclamation point, because if our show did that, then it would speak a lot to the end users.
I agree. So everyone go send an email to Randy and ask for a meeting conversation. I think that's probably the best use of our time, to have that, at least have that meeting or conversation with them.
Agree.
All right. Any last closing questions or comments from anybody?
Just one final question for Amanda. What advice would you give to exhibit houses, custom exhibit houses, or just exhibit builders on how they advise their maybe smaller clients, the 10 by 10, 10 by 20, maybe the smaller, medium size, on advocacy, or on how they approach the show organizer to get things changed, because they either don't have the knowledge, the courage, the wherewithal, the whatever.
The most effective thing that we've seen is for them to take a few extra minutes to either call or meet with a larger size exhibit and go in together, because we have not seen where they just don't believe, nor do I can tell you, it's a numbers game. I mean, the organizers are just not going to pay attention to 1 10 by 10, right, or 1 10 by 20. But if they talk to somebody who has a larger footprint on the floor, I'm almost 100% that they are going to have the same pain points. They just need to have that. They need to go in there with a couple other people, and that's how I lead my customers who are smaller, medium size. We go in together, and that's how we've been able to get change. And I personally, my little secret or trick that I'll leave you with is, I've trained, because obviously I can't be everywhere, I've trained my core team on how to have these meetings and discussions. So when they're out in the marketplace and they're on the floor and they're, getting charged double or triple electrical or whatever trade, to go in and have that discussion with the organizer at the show. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10, it's taken off the bill. So those are just some, hard and fast tactical things that I would recommend outside of the, obviously we're going to keep fighting the fight in the big picture with the organizers. But, when you guys run into trouble on a show by show basis, I wouldn't just lay down and say, okay, it is what it is.
Well, I think you tell people it's called the Cohen Challenge.
Have a good day, sir.
Rob, just call.
The Rob.
The Rob.
Amanda, on behalf of everybody who joined us on this call and all the people that will watch it afterwards, thanks for sharing your expertise with us. It's appreciated.
Oh, no,
Yes,
my
very
pleasure.
good.
Great
And
to
to
see
all-
you. Okay,
and to
good
all
luck,
the-
Lester.
Sorry. And to all you attendees, thanks for your conversation. Thanks for your questions, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a
Bye.
ton.
You're
Thank
so
you.
awesome, Amanda.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks, everybody.